Last week, actually, I was preaching in the first service, so the second service was more of Pastor Gordon's kind of time to say what he has to say before he has to leave. So you guys haven't, if you were here in the first service last week, then you remember what I was preaching about. I was talking about Mary witnessing the angel and then dealing with it. But today, I would like us to move on from that story into another lesson that God has, and it's written in Luke in chapter 2, verses 41 to 50. Now, the story everybody knows. You guys read this story hundreds of times. If you didn't read it, you definitely heard it. If you like Christmas movies, you definitely saw this part several times. So everybody's going to be familiar with the story. So we don't have to stick too much on the story itself, but I would like us to get, I'll share with you the insight that God gave me as I was going through it. And the sense of the title, like it's starting to look way too much like Christmas. I'll explain that kind of through the sermon. At the end, it's going to be clear. I'm constantly accused of a hater, like a Christmas hater guy. Like, you don't like Christmas music, you don't like this. No, I kind of like that, but in decent size, like a pocket size. And when instead of 12 days of Christmas, you have kind of 12 weeks of Christmas to kind of go through. I stopped listening to the radio. Like, I can't, no more, please. You find like a hard rock station, just something that is completely not Christian, and they play Christian music, like Christmas music. So it's a little bit of, I'm looking forward to January, let's put it that way. But right now, we are in the season, our minds are on it. Let's read it. Let's open the Bible. Let's read it. Let's go through some lessons that we can find in here. So, Luke chapter 2, verses 41 and 50. Let's read verses 41 and 42. Let's see what the story is all about. I hope you have your Bibles on you so you can read it. If not, there are verses on the screen with ESV translation. My favorite, sometimes a little bit not clear, but very close to the original. Let's read it together. Now, his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. And when Jesus, was 12 years old, they went up according to custom. Now, Jews at that time, they still had that old nation, so from all over the country, when the Passover comes, everybody goes to Jerusalem. This was like a must. This was not optional. The only reason you would stay is somebody has to stay to take care of the flocks and like those basic stuff. But generally, like 95% of the nation would just crowd Jerusalem for the holiday of Passover. Imagine like this: Christmas time in Denver. Now, imagine the whole country. Everywhere, east, south, west, everybody just crowds and comes over here to Denver. How would that look like? Imagine, so we have what? We have like 5 million people here, and we can barely deal with it. Like, just leave, please. Imagine 300 million people. Let's say 250, for example. We have to leave 50 million to take care of the basics. 250 million people just cross Denver. How would that look like? Try to picture I-70. Oh, Lord. That would be like the Christmas in hell. Yeah, that's right. Yes, just grab a horse. Now, at that time, the travel was not as easy. It's very realistic how you imagine Denver to look like with everybody crowded over here. That's how Jerusalem would look like at the time of Passover. Just people everywhere. The city, the size of a city was not really big, but when people come, the city is 10 times bigger with all of the tents. Everybody sat around it, and everybody wants to celebrate. Everybody's there for the season. Now, at that time, the travel was a little bit more complicated. So there was no low-cost fare, donkey fare to Jerusalem. you would walk. Most of the people would walk. If you were kind of high middle class, you would have like a Mercedes donkey to sit on and then kind of go to. If you were like Bentley camel guy, it would be even easier. But generally, most of people would be just walking from wherever they are to Jerusalem, which means the trip would take several days. Now, at that time, there was no like highway state police or anything like that. So if something happens, you just dial 911. No. If you're by yourself and something happens on the road, that's it. You're stuck. So nobody would ever travel alone. People would travel in caravans. And it would be family and friends, usually people from the same place, like, okay, 7 a.m., come on, let's go, it's noon. It's kind of like that. But everybody just gets together and they travel together. First thing was help. If something goes wrong, you need help. Second thing was safety. People would get robbed at that time. You remember the story of the Samaritan, right? So people get robbed. Don't be by yourself, especially not right now when like travel is high, which means that robberies are high. So let's just go together. So that is what was happening in verse 41. Now, verse 42 tells us a little bit about Jesus. This is literally, when you read the Gospels, you have the birth, you have the baby Jesus, and then you just have a jump to when he is 12 years old. So you have the beginning of his life, and we jump to the end of his childhood over here. Now, this was Jesus' first time to go to Jerusalem. Kids, all of the kids would stay at home. They wouldn't take the kids. But the reason this was his first time in Jerusalem is because he was turning 18 in our terms. Time of maturity and adulthood is marked in Jewish customs at the age of 12. Have you guys heard of bar mitzvah? You know what bar mitzvah is, right? Well, they had a similar tradition, not the same as they have it today, but a similar one, and they would name him Ben HaTorah, which means the son of the law. And he becomes the one that can vote, so his vote counts in discussions. Most important of all, at the age of 12, Jesus became responsible for his own actions. So by that time, his parents were responsible for him. But now, it's responsibility completely on himself. It was very normal at that time that after the age of 12, they would get married. By the age of 14, he would already have 3 kids. By the age of 16, he would have his own house and flock and everything to take care of. So the idea of adolescence that we have in our modern age wasn't really too popular at that time. It was like, wait, you're 16, you're not married yet? Burn. Really. So at this time, they're taking Jesus to Jerusalem, and this was supposed to be the time where he is going to become an adult. So it's a big deal for the family. This is something that happens, you only have so many sons, only so many times they're going to turn age of adulthood, so this is a big deal. Now, one thing that you can see here, like if you picture this whole, everything that I just described, the good times rolling, right? Joseph is there, Mary is there, Jesus is there, donkey is there, everybody's there. And everything is good. The times are good. Why ruining it? The times are fine and we are fine. Everything is okay, right? My debt is paid off, I have some here and there, I have a good job, I have a good family. Things are looking up for my life. Thank you, Lord, things are good. Everything is just as it's supposed to be. I love it. Let's not jinx it. Have you ever done that? Don't jinx it. We love the good times, right? We love the good times. God loves the good times too. Everything we do in life, why do you want a better job? Think about it. Why do you want a better job? Because you want more of the good times. Why do you want to grow your family? You see that as good times happening. Why do you want to help your children go to a good school? You want them to have good times in life. Nobody starts a plan with, hey, let's get married, and then, I don't know, maybe like in 8-10 years we can divorce. Nobody does that. Oh, hey, let's have kids, and I'm going to ignore them, and then when they're teenagers, they're going to just ignore me too. Nobody makes plans like that, right? Nevertheless, so many people follow that plan they didn't make. The only way you can see what plan you made is by the consequences of this plan. Over here, we have Joseph and Mary, and the good times are rolling. Now, this was the first time Jesus was in Jerusalem. Tell me, when was the last time he was in Jerusalem? How did that look like? Come on, remember. When Jesus was in Jerusalem, when Jesus entered Jerusalem for the last time, how did that look like? Rejoicing. What else? What was the name that he was given? What was the call that he listened from the kids yelling? Come on, guys, wake up. I'm not going to tell you this. Hosanna to the Son of David. Hosanna to the King. Jesus is riding a donkey. They're throwing those palm branches and their cloaks in front of him, and everybody is worshiping him as king. Now, imagine that. Festive atmosphere. The king is coming. Who was with him over there? His 12 disciples. What did the disciples think? Oh, good times are rolling. Right? In a few days, Jesus is going to be announced king. I'll be the prime minister. You can be the minister of defense. Okay, we have Judas for the treasury. We have that figured out. Okay, we got to figure out who's going to lead this country. We're going to lead this country. Good times are rolling. Yes. Didn't end up that well for them, right? How did it end up? You remember. A few days later, they were in a forest outside of Jerusalem, afraid, crying, freaking out, because their king is about to get killed. We tend to allow ourselves to become hostages of the good times. Think about it. We want these good times so bad that we sometimes deliberately deny the fact of our own identity. You are a Christian, right? Christians, you belong to God, right? Lovely. Now, who does this planet belong to that we live on? Huh? Satan. Remember that. God did create it, and he gave it to Adam and allowed Adam to take care of it. Then Adam gives that authority to Satan, and Jesus calls Satan, if you remember, the king of this world. So, we belong to God. We live in the kingdom of Satan. Where are we at? We are on an enemy territory, my friends. Think about it. We are at war, and we act as if the good times are going to roll forever. You see, this is one of the things that tends to crash very often our life out of the blue. Just because we forget who we are and we forget where we are. Excuse me. This thing is not friendly. Yeah, I don't know how Gordon does it. So, 1940s, beginning just before the World War II, Germany pretty much started doing their own internal war by cleaning up all of the genetically inferior, which were essentially the Jews. Now, one of the explanations why so many Jews ended up in concentration camps is because they did not want to leave. They had it good. They were really, in Germany, middle of that early 20th century, they were really rich. They owned a lot of property. They were good. They had it good in Germany. And then the signs started coming. For 10 years, from 1930 All the way to 1940, the signs were coming that things are not going to be that good. But they ignored it. They ignored it, even to the point when they started packing them into the trains and taking them to the concentration camps. They were going happily because they really thought it's going to be much better for them. Not all of them. There was a lot of them who left Germany in that period of 30s. But way more of them chose to stay because they could not deal with the fact that the good times are going to end. And they ended up, unfortunately, very, very bad. So, I want us to think about this right now. The good times, yeah, they're good. We do, and we ask for the blessing for the good times, but we have to have in mind, we don't belong here. We don't build our home here. We are here until the time comes for us to go home. This is like a bus station, that we're just trying to make it as nice as possible until the time comes for us to go home. Yet sometimes we get so attached to this bus station, these lovely metal benches and this beautiful filthy floor and all of these people going through my living room all the time, that we just, it feels so good here. We cannot do that. We cannot do that because we're going to end up like Jesus' disciples. We're going to end up like Joseph and Mary. How did Joseph and Mary end up? Verse 43. Let's read it together. And when the feast was ended and they were returning, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. And his parents did not know it. Now, how many parents do we have over here? Okay, you guys will relate. You guys will relate to this story. Have you ever lost your child in a supermarket? Have you ever been lost in a supermarket as a child? That is so traumatic. That's horrible. But as a parent, I've never been in a... No, here's the thing. You parents have it easy because you lose your own kids. You don't know what does it feel like to be a youth pastor. When you lose somebody else's kids. Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord. Anytime we would go campings or doing stuff, outings, whatever with the youth, I used to be so annoying to the chaperones, to the youth leaders. Where is he? Where is she? Where is everybody here? Is there always checking? I couldn't even imagine the idea. And Gordon is the one who put this trauma in me. This is what he told me. Pretty much, no, he really did. This is what he told me. When I got here, he's like, okay, you're going to be working with the youth. So let me tell you, when I was a youth pastor, we went camping and one of the children drowned. They died. And I'm like, oh, well, he didn't tell me the whole story. It was like a big camp group, and he was just one of the pastors over there. But he made it sound, I guess to scare me, he made it sound like it was a pretty personal story. So I'm like, no, don't you worry. No, that's not going to happen to me. And that trauma followed me. We went, what? I don't know, even a dozen campouts probably. And then, anyways, still traumas that I'm pulling from that period of time. Yes. But it's not really hard to imagine Joseph and Mary being with the family, everybody, and that was not like 5 people. This was not a typical American family, This was more like a Hispanic family, There's like 26 people over there, and they're just the first cousins, So everybody's over there. Everybody's yelling, screaming, and running around, and they just figured Jesus was somewhere around here. They just figured, yeah, he's fine. He couldn't be too far away. We're okay. Good times are rolling. Everything is in place. And then we come to verse 44 and 45. But supposing him to be in the group, they went a day's journey. But then they began to search for him among their relatives and acquaintances. This is horrible. This is so disturbing. Think about this. Imagine you're on a weekend trip with a bus of family in Denver, and you guys are all back in the bus, and you reach Dallas, and you realize your son is not in the bus. And then this is even worse. That's why I pulled that youth pastor card. They didn't lose their child. They didn't lose their friend's child or their relative's child. They lost God's child. This is like the level 99 of losing a child. It can't be any worse. Really. This is one of the things that happens to us so easily while we are on the way with the good times. Life occupies us. We just kind of go with the motions. We move on with the punches, and we're trying to figure out and get the best out of this. And sometimes the life pushes us further than we are willing to deal with, but we deal with it because, hey, we want these good times to roll. This is my question for you. When do you notice that in your marriage, in your job promotion, in your educational efforts, in your social life, when do you realize that Jesus was left behind? Think about it. Good times are rolling and everything is okay. What is the moment when you realize that Jesus was left behind? Is it when your spouse tells you, hey, listen, this is not working out. After 10 years, this is really not working out. Or is it when your doctor tells you, well, hey, over the years, you developed this cancer and now it's here. Or is it the moment your fellow workers don't want to talk to you because in order to get the promotion, you had to snitch on them? Usually Jesus is left behind when we are willing to compromise with life. Life wants to hand you things. Life wants to hand you more of the good times. And when it's blessed by God, then it's going to be by God's will. And we know what God's will is. We have the Bible. We know how a Christian is supposed to act, how a Christian is supposed to talk, how a Christian is supposed to think. We know that. So when life wants to hand you something that's going to be the good times for a small price of your soul, who is it handing it to you then? Is it God? Or is it the king of this world? You see, this is the things we tend to ignore. Just like Mary and Joseph. They're like, yeah, he's somewhere, we're fine, he's close by. Until they realized he is a day's journey in a huge city filled with people from all over the country. They have no idea where he is. No idea. So, once Jesus is left behind, you have a gap that is left there. And you know the gap, because the good times end. When the good times start not being so good, okay, where is Jesus? Where is Jesus? Let's see where he is. Refinding Jesus is not that hard, but it takes some things. Mary and Joseph first went to their family and friends. Then they realized it's not there, they needed to go further. Sometimes it's enough to go to our family and friends. Sometimes it's enough to talk to your parents, mom and dad, what am I going to do with this? How am I going to deal with this life? Sometimes it's enough to talk to somebody who really knows who you are. Because our friends and family, they have a different perspective of us. Have you ever had that experience where you talk about yourself, well, I'm this and that, and then somebody is like, yeah, sure. And that person loves you. That person is like, I had that moment like long time ago. I don't even know what happened anymore. I just know that these teenagers drove me nuts. It happened many of times, but this time I decided to flush it all out on Facebook. So I put a post, whatever happened, and like I finished it with a question. So was I really this stupid when I was a teenager too? And that was a more of a rhetorical question to explain how I'm not. I wasn't that stupid. And then my high school friends showed up on my Facebook page. And it was a very kind of refreshing experience. You remember this? Do you remember that? You remember when you jumped off of the second floor and so on? I'm like, okay, yeah, I was so stupid too. Yeah, okay, I got it. Yeah. Go back to the people you know. Go back to the people who know you. And try to see if they can help you find Jesus. But if you have to take the next step is going a day's journey back to Jerusalem. So, what happened to my marriage? Let's track it back and see where did this start cracking? Why are my children not talking to me? Trace it back and see when did you stop talking to your children. You go back and find the place where you lost Jesus. That is what Mary and Joseph had to do. And it took them how long? Look at verses 46 and 47. Super disturbing. After 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were amazed at his understanding, at his answers. I'm pretty sure that Mary and Joseph were not that amazed. They were like, 3 days. Okay, let's do a little bit of cosplay. So all of you who are married or have a partner, put yourself in Joseph's and Mary's shoes. So how would a conversation on the first day look like on the trip back to Jerusalem? So you lost a child in Jerusalem. Now you're by yourselves going back to Jerusalem. How would that conversation look like? What would be the favorite? It's your fault. How could you leave your son like that? Me? You were the one who was taking care of them. You guys can hear that. You feel me, right? You know how that looks like. So that was the first day. Now the second day. What was the second day? Where did we go? Come on, you always remember. You remember what I ate 2 years ago. Where did we go yesterday? Where were we? I don't know. You were leading the way. I wasn't paying. You always lead the way. You never ask for directions. So.
I think that's a 21st century conversation.
That was, I'm pretty sure, the first century conversation too. They're over there trying to figure out, where did we take Jesus? Okay, we went to those roads. Let's go. Let's check your uncle. He has no idea. We ate in that restaurant over there. Yes, Jesus was there with us. No, yes, that's right. Let's go over there. Just imagine the ramble that they had to go through, the brain crunch of the moment trying to think, what in the world did we do with the Son of God? How do you imagine their prayers looked like that second night, before finally finding a place at 3 a.m. and trying to crash for a couple of hours to get some rest before continuing to look for him again? What were they even praying? Like, God, we kind of lost your son, So finally, 3 days later, they find him. One thing to learn from this lesson, and this was a lesson for me that I learned on my own skin. When you lose Jesus in your attempts to keep the good times rolling, when you lose him something on the way, and you did not notice right away, but you notice when the good times start cracking down, it takes time to find him again. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to be just, bam, he's there. He is there, but it's going to take me and you time to get back to the spot where we made a mistake. It's going to take quite a bit of time. It's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to take a lot of pain. But this is the biggest thing that's going to take. And this is what a lot of people are not ready for. It's going to take for you to change. I don't want to change. I just want Jesus back in my life, but I don't want to change. Well, if you were good, you wouldn't have lost Jesus way back over there. If you were fine the way you are, Jesus would be here. This is one of the things that we have hard. The older we get, the harder we deal with the fact that if we invite Jesus in our lives and if we want him back, changes are going to happen. Because you come to that diverting point and you realize that you got that promotion because you betrayed these people who used to be your friends. I want Jesus back. I can't have this job anymore. I put my 30 days notice. You wonder why your kids are not talking to you. You go back and realize that you were so busy working, so busy getting your career going, that your grandparents, your aunts, babysitters, daycare were raising your kids. And then YouTube on top of it. And now, when your life is slowing down and their life is speeding up, you're just another figure in their life. You're far from being the figure in their life. So it takes change now. You didn't invest time then. You want to invest time now, or you're going to have to try triple the hard. You guys get my point. You understand. This is not something that's going to hocus pocus, poof, and the magical Jesus Spirit did the thing, and now everything is okay. No. No. Things that take time to get lost, take time to get found. Take time to get found. Verse 48. We already touched this one, but this one is a little bit different. And when his parents saw him, they were astonished. And his mother said to him, "Son, why have you treated us so? Behold, your father and I have been searching for you in great distress." So, there were 3 Jewish mothers around the coffee table sipping coffee. And the first one says, "Hey, guess what? Look through the window." And there's like a nice Mercedes out there. "My son cashed out 30 grand to buy me this Mercedes. That's how good my son is." The second mother, she opens her tablet, look at the photos. "My son cashed out 50 grand to buy me and my husband a trip, a month-long cruise trip that we enjoyed so much. That's how good is our son." And the third mother, she's like, "Well, in the past 20 years, my son spent thousands and thousands of dollars paying the therapists to talk about me." That is a Jewish mother syndrome. If you know any people who are of Jewish descent, they can confirm that. This was not a joke, by the way. This was just a report of how things. Now, you can see the Jewish mother in these verses. Who is to blame for what happened? Have you ever done this in your own life? Why are you doing this to me, God? Why are you letting these things happen in my life? Why are you letting me suffer? What kind of a God are you when you're letting me suffer like this? Have you ever been there? This blame game is what sets us back in finding Jesus a lot. Just because suddenly, it's not my fault. I am perfectly fine. It's his fault. He screwed up. He didn't know how to figure things, how to do things. That is what we say when we ask God why. Why did you do this to me? Meaning, you shouldn't have done this to me. Meaning, you don't know what you're doing. You get my point. I talked about this last week a little bit more. Like Mary, she didn't ask why is this happening to me. Like Moses. Moses was horrible. Moses asked like 20 whys, and then he said to God, Just send somebody else, leave me alone. And the guy's like, no, pick up your stuff and go, you're going. We're not going to discuss this anymore. But Mary was like, how is this going to happen to me? Mary didn't ask for why is she in a super weird situation. But she asked, how is this supposed to happen? You know, you don't ask why when you trust somebody. You heard that example. If you're walking down the street and there's a guy running around the corner with a baseball hat pulled on his face and a coat, and he's holding a bag, and you hear like police noise coming from there, and this guy just comes and tells you, hey, hold his bag, hold, and he runs away. What would you do with the bag? Drop it and run. Okay, I hope you would do that. That would be a smart choice. Now, you see a guy running around the corner with a hat and a bag, and you see it's your dad. And he's like, hey, hold his bag for me, and he runs away. What would you do with the bag? Yeah, you know, like, okay, Dad, all right, cool. And the police is kind of like, but here's the thing. Why would you hold the bag? Because you trust your dad. You know your dad would not put you in harm's way. You know that he cares for you. And you don't ask, why did you give me this? You're just like, okay, sure, I'll hold it. You're not afraid that anything wrong is going to happen to you. In the same way, look at the way you look at God. When you ask why, you see God as a stranger running around that corner. But when you say, okay, how? What is this? What is this handful of things in my life that you just put before me? How am I gonna do this? That is when you see God running around the corner as your dad. And this is very important. Very, very important, my friends, because here's the thing. Good times never roll forever. And then on top of it, very often we have to choose to cut on the good times because of the compromises that are not going to bring Him glory, compromises that are making us being who we are not, the children of God. Those are the moments when, actually, that's today, we should stop valuing our life by the good times. If we don't do that, we will always be in this same trap of losing Jesus behind, because you know when the gift is more important than the one who gives you the gift? That is where we get ourselves into when it's all about the good times. It's not. Because here's the thing. When you have God in your life, when Jesus is there, He promised, He said, I'll give you peace that this world can never give. Which means that when circumstances change and the good times are not rolling anymore, the peace is still there. I remember this from the war from the 90s. Like when your country falls apart, everybody's shooting at each other. You have people who are everybody's in great distress, but you can recognize a Christian, a real Christian, because of that peace that they had in those moments when there was no hope, there was nothing. Remember the recession 10 years ago? Everybody here was old enough to experience it on their own skin. Remember how it felt? The only peace a lot of people had was in God. But you see what happened? We had a surge in suicides for several years at that time. Because when people lost the good times, they lost themselves. And then they just gave up on life. So today, right now, right here, we are before God. And I challenge you when you go home, don't just let this pass by. New Year is coming. New Year should be different, should be better than this year. Not in the amount of the good times, but in the amount of the presence of Jesus in things in your life. Sit down. Thank you. Sit down and be introspective. Look at your marriage. Is Jesus the one who is right there in that hug with your spouse. Look at your children. Is Jesus the one that is raising your kids with you? Look at your job. Is he over there with you and you are in sync with his ideas of how your job is supposed to look like? Try to analyze your life and see if Jesus is a part of it. Because here's the thing. Right now, we have good times here. I think like this Black Friday broke, again, all of the records in spending in the United States. I don't remember the figure, but I know that it broke all of the records ever since they keep tracking. So, apparently we are good. The lives are good. But we know, again, all of us are old enough in here to know that that's not going to last. So I really hope that you are ready for that. Because here's the thing. The next recession might come next year, might come in 5 years. But your cancer might come in a year. A death of a child can come in 6 months. A loss of job can come tomorrow. God forbid on all of these things. We want the good times. But the only way for us to be ready for these storms not to knock us down is if we are going to compromise this life for the sake of keeping Jesus all the way here with us. So that's my challenge for you today. Sorry, I talked too long, way too long. I'm like almost beyond 45 minutes. I don't know what's up with me. It's Gordon's spirit. So, let me leave you with this. Jesus wants to be a part of your life. The only reason he is not is because you close the door. Don't close the door. Make sure the door is open. Make sure that he's invited. Be ready to clean up your mess and make room for him. Because he wants to live not just with us, he wants to live in us. May that happen in next year. Amen.